Man, welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in with your guy. Man, this has been one of the hottest sports shows to hit the air. Going on 2 years now. It's nuts. This is episode 205, season number 2, with your main man here, the one and only Coach Tony. And this is the Pull Up Podcast show from the Rise Studio. Tonight, we've been talking about this subject for quite some time. For those who've been on my show, for those that have been listening to me, for those that have been a part of what I've been talking about name, image, and likeness. Tonight, we're going to take another step. We're going to go even deeper in the conversation. But before we bring our guest out, Val, you know what to do.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, I said bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, it's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull
Man, every time I hear that track, I just want to be, it's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull Up Podcast, the show. Man, special thanks go out to my nephew, Demetrius Jarman, a.k.a. Young Farrah, for dropping that hot track. Got to say what's up to my baby girl, Skylar Wilson, on the air tonight, checking me out. What's up? 2 hands for Paw Paw. You already good with that. Hey, tonight's show, we're going to rock and roll tonight. We're going to get more in depth for those young athletes that are looking to figure out what's going on with high school recruitment, what you can do in terms of making sure that you're on the right track for a college scholarship. And then for those of you that are in college, trying to figure out how do I go about making sure that I get paid for the sport that I play in? Because remember, not every sport is a revenue generating sport. We're going to talk to my guy tonight. And he is the CEO and the owner of the Players NIL. And we're going to go in depth talking about NIL versus pay for play. Totally different subject. I'm going to bring out my guy tonight, Mr. Mark Koesterer. What's going on, buddy, Mark? Come on out tonight. Let's talk.
Hey, Coach. Good to see you.
What's up, Mark? How you doing tonight?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy Monday. It's nice to see your face and hear your energetic voice. Great job.
Man, I pray. Hey, give me before we take off. Who you got tonight, man? The Kansas City Chiefs or the New Orleans Saints, man? What you got?
I'm picking an upset. I'm going with New Orleans.
Ooh, okay. You think them boys are gonna do it? I think that Taylor Swift is in the house again tonight, Mark. I don't know. So far she's undefeated.
I called it an upset, so I didn't say that they were favored. But I think the main line about understanding the NFL is a big part of it is who needs to win more, and I think New Orleans needs to win more than the Chiefs do.
Yep, that's a true statement. And if Kamara can get out and run the ball the way I normally think he's been doing the last few weeks, then you may be on to something. So, and speaking of on to something, I got a very good friend of yours who's on the show tonight, listening in. And he's moved here to Nashville, Tennessee with me, Mark, and we play golf. We got a little Sunday hackers league. You know what I mean? We go out and tell a bunch of lies, have fun, drink, play golf, man, and it's great. But Mr. Terrell Washington told me to tell you what's up, teammate of yours at Hillsdale.
Wow, big T. Nice to hear that name.
Man, he said, man, you got who on the show tonight? I said, man, Mark's on the show. He's like, man, get out of here. I go, yeah. He said, that's my old teammate. I'm like, get out of here. He said, yeah, tell him what's up. So Mark's, man, it's great, Terrell, checking in tonight with us on air, man.
Nice to hear that name, Terrell. Great. Let's catch up sometime.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to make sure I get him your info so he'll be reaching out to you. Man, let's get back into this, Mark. Let's just tell the people, man, kind of where you're from and how you kind of grew up and how sports became the main entity for your career.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's an interesting story. I've told it a lot and people seem to be interested in it. So, I was a middle-class family, the son of a junior high gym teacher. and a stay-at-home mom, which is the way it was in my generation.
Exactly.
Both parents were educators. And, you know, I guess it was in my genes. My father was a college athlete. So sports was a part of my life early. Now I'm talking about the days way before ESPN, way before Fox
Right.
Sports, way before all of this. So we had this is how it really began. We had, you know, like one game a week, college basketball. And I was a basketball junkie. You know, I know you have a big basketball fan base here. And I was a basketball Jones back in the day, right? I loved basketball. And I watched college basketball every Saturday on NBC with Dick Enberg.
Exactly.
And the team in that day and age that was dominant was the UCLA Bruins and John Wooden, okay?
Yep.
Those of you who are too young to remember, look it up. He won 11 national championships. And one of the great players in that whole era was a guy named Bill Wall. And I watched and I studied everything, how they wore their shorts, how they wore their jerseys, their socks, and their shoes. And if you remember, they wore leather shoes, which no one had in those days.
Yep.
Adidas Superstars.
Exactly.
So, lo and behold, I go to school one day. I had never seen them other than on television and in the pictures in Sports Illustrated, right? So one day I go to school, and there's a kid from not my neighborhood, from a little bit more money neighborhood, and he had Adidas Superstars. And I just about died. I was like, oh my gosh, where'd you get those? How'd you get those? How much did they cost? I asked him a million questions. I go home that night. We're having dinner, and my mom and dad say, you know, how was school? The normal family conversation. I said, well, this guy came to school and he's wearing these sneakers. They're called Adidas Superstars. And my mom just rolled her eyes like, okay. And I said, I want to get a pair of them. And they said, how much do they cost? And I said, $42. My father said no before I could get the dollars word out of my mouth. And he said, but I'll tell you what, you know, if you earn the money, I'll take you, because we had to drive an hour to get them because there was no local sporting goods store. There was no Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever it was. So I got a paper route. And it was the beginning of my journey, which is the first principle of my business. How do you use athletics to better your life? My drive for sports, my drive for competition, my drive for athletics came from those early lessons, and the discipline and the earning of the money and the building up of a bank account so I could buy my first pair of Adidas Superstars was the beginning of my passion for sports.
Man, that's funny because that's like the old way of how we did it, Mark. You know that I'm a Chicago guy. And I should tell my son, even though I moved to Nashville, I said, dude, wintertime come, I want to make money. It wasn't very difficult. I figured out, you know, I could stay on my block and make a quick $200. It was 4 houses down, 4 houses back, $25 a house. And depending on who you work, so one of them going to give you a sandwich, somebody's going to give you some hot chocolate, and then 1 or 2 of them may even give you a tip, depending on how you do it. Now, you're going to be frozen because it's going to be, you know, 27, 30 degrees with the wind chill factor. But by the time you hit a couple of houses, your body kind of get used to the temperature, Mark. You know, it's out of sight, out of mind at that point. But the crazy part about it, what you just talked about, was the work ethic for something that you wanted. And those shoes became the driving force to where you go. Now, being a high school athlete, what sport did you gravitate to?
So I was a football, basketball player. I played tennis in junior high, actually, and then ran track in high school because the football coach was the track coach, and that was a requirement, right? So, but I was a basketball guy. I loved basketball in junior high school. I probably played basketball every day of the year. But unfortunately, Tony, don't laugh at me now. I was a 6'4" white guy that couldn't dunk.
So you were way before you before Woody Harrison did The White Man Can't Jump.
So I became a Division II football player. I was a tight end in college, but in high school, football and basketball were my main sports.
Oh man, that's you know, that's funny. You know, I kind of walked the same thing with you. Football, basketball. I was a halfback slot, you know, and wide receiver. Ran track later on. This kid, I used to smoke him all the time, Mark. He told me, I'm gonna put you out of here. I'm like, man, whatever. You can't even catch me. And the quarterback ran a sweep one day, man, and pitched it out. I caught it, and when I turned around, right under the chin. And all I remember, the coach told me the funniest story ever. I took my shoulder pads off, everything I got, my shoes, left them on the sideline of the football field, walked off the field. And when the game was over and the coaches came to look for me, no one could find me. They walked around the school and found me playing basketball in the gym, and I never left after that. So I get it, And then the funny part about it is that you go on and get those great situations from your dad building into you, become that D2, not worried about being a major athlete at Michigan or Illinois or Ohio State or something like that. You took what was able to come to you, and then you turn around and had a super duper sports family where then you taught your kids who went on to be 4 Division I ball players. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you remember, our first principle, right, is using athletics to better your life. And unfortunately, for those of us at the level that I played in college, my last football game was my last college game. There was nothing after that, right?
Right.
And so, I had this burning passion for sports. I knew what it had done for me. I met great people like Terrell, great teammates, still friends today with so many guys that I played with, and all the life lessons that you get in sports. And it's particularly college sports, right? The travel, the sacrifice, the dorm rooms, the tough practices, the getting knocked out, all of the things that go along with, playing sports. And what happened was I started raising my children, and I knew that I wanted to provide them opportunities. And there's plenty of ways for parents to do it. Could be art, music, travel, fashion, food, sneakers, cars, could be all kinds of things. But for me, I thought that sports would give them the best opportunity to achieve their dreams. And it was during this process, Coach, that I created the second mindset. There we go. Look at that.
Look at that.
That's actually on the set of a movie that we produced, a lacrosse movie called Crooked Arrows.
Oh, wow.
And those are my 3 boys right there. Thank you. That's a great photo. And so I developed the second phase of the second foundational pillar of my business, and that is, how do you use athletics to better the lives of the people around you? So you've done it for yourself. Now, how do you make a difference with your friends, your family, your community? And I was fortunate enough to be part of several youth organizations, some of which, grew. And, we've put a couple hundred kids in college now with one of those programs. I have 5 children, 4 college athletes, at the highest level, and really have been able to live that dream of using athletics to better the lives of the people around me.
That's funny that you talk about that, Mark. I was talking to a parent the other day, trying to make her understand exactly what you said. I so wish that I would have 3-way called you, because she was on the other side of the coin about speaking about academics and how sports was this and sports was that, and how no kid should have ever played it and academic. And I said, ma'am, I don't mean any harm, but what school did your daughter go to? And she mentioned it. I said, she's on an academic scholarship. I go, yeah. I said, well, let me tell you how she got that money, because of the school you were in. And I can tell you, Mark is a Power 5 school. I said, she probably got that money academically because of what the football team did, putting those kids in the stands, and what the basketball team secondary. 2 money-making sports in college athletics, and that's football and men and women's basketball are your revenue-generating sports. And I said, not to say that her academics didn't mean much. I'm just saying that she's going to school. She probably want to thank the athletic department for getting most of it. What's your thought process behind something like that?
Well, look, we know college sports is a big business. We know that the whole college ecosystem is a big business. I just had this conversation this weekend with someone. I go on lots of college campuses to meet with kids and talk to coaches. I don't know if I've been on a college campus that didn't have a construction crane on it recently, right? Everyone's investing in facilities, science labs, new dorms is a big thing. Of course, athletic facilities have been going for a long time. So it's a big business. And what do they have to do to sustain and build that brand is they have to have great students, student athletes and great students. So they build science labs, they build research centers, and they incentivize good student athletes, good students, good people to come to their school, and they have to fund it from somewhere, right? And they fund it from a number of sources, but college athletics is one of those sources. Not so much the money, Tony, but the branding that drives donations and drives attention and the desire of kids to go. I don't know the numbers, but I know I've read, about the applications increasing at the University of Alabama since Nick Saban has been there. Like kids
Correct.
from the north want to go there. No one ever wanted to go there from Chicago or New York. We didn't even know what Alabama was. Now there's kids from all over the country and probably all over the world.
Man, you couldn't have been spot on with that. Hey, we're going to take a break in between the quarter here with my guy, Mark Koesterer, CEO of the Player NIL. Val, let's pay a couple bills. We'll be right back on the Pull Up Podcast Show with your Coach Tony.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the KeySpot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. KeySpot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. KeySpot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Man, welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show. Something I forgot to tell you guys earlier, to make sure when our audience is growing week by week, please make sure that you like us, share with your friends, and more importantly, subscribe to the show, because we're bringing you quarter by quarter of good information like we are tonight. Mark, let's talk a little bit about the inception. I'm taking some classes with SMWV, Sports Management Worldwide, and been down that road before, doing some things, and you and I have got connected a few years ago, man. I appreciate it. Been staying in touch with you. Love everything you're doing. And it just really made me, after talking to you, it really made me want to dive deeper into the things that I'm doing with my company, the Rise NIL. And let's go back to kind of give the people a understanding. Now, we've spoken about the NIL on my show quite a bit, but to dive deeper, for those that don't know and do your homework, the NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. It really came about a little over a decade and a half ago by this player from UCLA, as Mark mentioned earlier about UCLA, by the name of Ed O'Bannon. He and Charles O'Bannon, they were brothers. Charles O'Bannon decided to bring a lawsuit against the EA Sports, which is some of you young guys, Electronic Arts, for the name, image, and likeness of players that were on the video game that was being, played, and the Electronic Arts was making money behind this. And so he decided to go ahead and sue the NCAA over this, and it drug out in the course and drug out till down the road. So, Mark, you want to kind of take us back on the history of, going from that piece when that lawsuit kind of came about up until now, what's kind of going on with the NIL and the NCAA?
Yeah, sure. You're spot on about the O'Bannon case was the beginning of the iceberg breaking away. But let's go back even further, Tony. Let's make sure that the audience understands that forever and ever, there was a line of demarcation between amateur and professional athletes, okay? And the governing body of college athletics, the NCAA, had always determined that if athletes use their name, image, and likeness to profit, that they would not be eligible as amateurs. They would be deemed professional. But that goes back 100 years, back to Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and all these great baseball players that were sponsored by, baseball card companies and other, retail consumer products. But in 1992, this is actually the beginning of the line being, grayed out a little bit between amateur and professional. 1992 was the Dream Team in Barcelona.
I remember that.
The United States had sent professional basketball players to play in the Olympics because, like the NCAA, the Olympics had always been reserved for amateur athletes.
Correct.
So we started to blur those lines between amateur and athletic professional in 1992. O'Bannon was one case. There were several other cases. And eventually the lawsuits just piled up, and the risk and the liability was so great that the NCAA on July 1st, 2021, washed their hands of those restrictions and basically said there's no more line defining amateur and professional athletes.
And for those that want to go back and touch on what Mark just said, for those that never got an opportunity to watch, go YouTube it, go on NBA TV. They just had the episode of the Dream Team on NBA TV the other day. You know, it was so prevalent in 1992 that Michael Jordan, being a Nike guy at that time, covered the shield over with the United States flag, because I think Mark was either Adidas or Reebok that made the uniforms, and he couldn't show that logo because he was wearing his Jordans. And that was really it, and it blew up because you got Magic was with Converse, Bird was with Converse, Patrick Ewing had his own deal at that time. Barkley had his own deal. So it was pretty big. And then Michael covered up the logo with the USA flag, and that kind of sent everything into, hysteria.
Yeah, I think it was Reebok. That's a great story.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. So when you look at that and you look at the fight, because again, it wasn't easy. And, with the O'Bannons coming out of UCLA, and for those that don't know, they were two brothers. They were big time. And O'Bannon, Charles went on and had a 12, 13 year NBA career. Mark, how did that case itself kind of set the standards for the future of NIL, the way that the NCAA thought that it was going to happen, but how did that case kind of set the standards of what we're looking at when it came about in 21?
Well, first of all, I think there was arrogance on the part of the NCAA because they didn't address it and didn't deal with it, and that's why we're stuck with what we have today.
Right.
Second of all, what it did primarily, Coach, was it awakened all other athletes to the reality that they were that the schools and the NCAA was profiting off of their name, image, likeness without any compensation. And it really started this, you're showing a graphic now, this wave, right? And I tell people today that the wave is coming. Well, the wave has been coming for some time.
Exactly.
And those of us that are lifeguarding are telling everyone to start swimming so they don't get swallowed by it. Unfortunately, the NCAA didn't get this graphic 10 years ago, or maybe we wouldn't be where we are right now.
Correct. And if you look at this graphic, according to those that swim in oceans, right, for safety reasons, if you were swimming like that guy, you're going to get eaten up by that wave. So supposedly, in order to make sure you kind of swim through it, you swim sideways. So if you swim sideways, let the wave go over, you usually have your life saving. And so the NCAA is swimming towards that wave. And like Mark said, they're getting eaten up. The funny part about it, Mark, is now that the NCAA is kind of, sitting there, they're going back and forth. They didn't know whether to push, pull. And you made a great mention a moment ago. And back in the day, how many athletes I had athletes that was with me, man, had cars on the campus. We used to have great games. And as we call the boosters or the sponsors of the university, used to invite us to parties, give us money behind the scenes. I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid. I'm not talking about that. I'm not telling anybody. I'm just going to play harder the next game. Now the money's on the table. Now the NCAA cannot stop it because it's become big business. Talk a little bit about how the NCAA kind of lost their grips on everything.
Well, when they removed the name, image, and likeness restrictions on the amateur status of college athletes, they did it without any guidelines, no guardrails. And
Correct.
So it's human nature now. You get people with power, with money, with a passion for their school that want to win games, no restrictions and no rules. They created what we refer to today as a collective, which is really the booster club on steroids, right? This overgrown entity, right? That's everyone's collectively putting their money in a pool to affect recruiting. We call that pay for play, which is a reality. The second thing that they did that did not help us was they allowed the transfer portal rules to be removed as well. And so now you have, unlimited budgets, 1-year contracts, free agency, and in the revenue generating sports of football, men's and women's basketball, you have the chaos that we see today.
Exactly. And for those that don't know, again, we're talking to Mark, the CEO of the Players NIL. If you have any questions, please tap in tonight. Mark, we got a lot of parents, a lot of young kids that are listening tonight. And I'm going to take one step back and the comment Mark made a moment ago, just kind of give you this past year and a half, the NCAA lost a humongous fight with the University of Tennessee and West Virginia. And once they lost that fight, then they got upset because they were basically asking for 5% of all NIL money coming in. Like, not much. We just want 5%. But because people basically said, we're not giving you anything to the NIL, we're not giving you anything NCAA. And NCAA said, you know something? Starting the fall of 24, which August of this school year, what we're going to let athletes do is now basically the universities, you can manage yourself. So you're going to have the opportunity to have unlimited transfers. Mark, how has that changed the playing field of what we see today?
Well, I think the poster child for that is the University of Colorado and Coach Deion Sanders, right? Exactly. And he has, within the rules, I want to make sure that everyone understands, within the rules, has used it to create a free agency and rebuild his team each of the last 2 years. There's an ethical question about whether transfer portal is a good thing. There's a societal problem with kids that quit and don't stick it out and don't face adversity. But from a technical, legal standpoint, it's essentially created free agency, and it has drifted off into many, many other schools. Almost all the big-time schools now have a fifth-year quarterback or a transfer quarterback. No one goes to school and stays where they started. So it's changed college athletics probably forever.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny part about it, for those athletes that are watching, the high school kids that are watching right now, and I'm sure we're going to get it. And I'm going to definitely get Mark on the other side of halftime to talk about it. And that is the struggle is the high school senior, Mark. I am literally, I was just on the phone, literally having a phone conversation with a coach last Wednesday, D1, won't mention the school. And I'm reaching out for some of my athletes. And the coach told me directly, Mark, he says, hey, Tony, I love you to death. And man, I appreciate you. And I got 2 kids right now that I'm representing and working with as top 50. And, they said, no, coach, I'm a new coach at this university and my job is to win games. And I want to take what I got right now. And if we don't have a great season, unfortunately, I'm not looking at any high school kids. I am looking at the portal. I am absolutely looking at the portal. And we got Kevin Springer, my guy who sits in it from New York, said, hey, Mark, how you doing? Hey, coach. And hey, Coach Val, the voice. And he said, man, it's a great night just to talk about this. Elaborate a little bit on that, and because I got these parents are upset thinking these kids are not going anywhere. And I'm telling them, Mark, if you got a school that like you, I don't care if it's junior college, D1, D2, D3, because the JUCOs, in my personal opinion, will become the new D1, because these kids that are coming out that may not be academically sound, junior college is going to be a new avenue like it was when you and I, Mark, was back in school in the 80s, man, and we saw the JUCO from San Jacinto and Coach Tartanian before Jerry took off at UNLV. I mean, JUCOs were rocking and rolling in the United States.
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, I think this really came to highlight last year March Madness. And we had an upset, right? We had Oakland University,
yes,
and Detroit, Michigan, upset Kentucky. Well, let me tell you, that fifth or sixth year senior that came in and scored all those points,
yes,
he was a graduate of Hillsdale College, where we boarded to I went to school.
I know, and I'm going crazy because I'm like, he comes out of Hillsdale and he goes D1 to Oakland and he puts up 40 with like 9 threes and breaks a record. And here's the funny part about it, kids that are listening tonight and parents. The kid understood or understands he probably is not a NBA guy. So what did he do? He used that NIL money. He said he's going to become a sports attorney. And do you think he's going to be successful? You're damn right he is. Well,
but let's get back to your question, because it's a great one. So that's an example of a kid going at a mature, now he's a 20, I think he was a 25-year-old.
Yep.
And to your story, a coach could recruit a 25-year-old that's played 4 years of college basketball, practiced, lifted weights, ate, academically eligible, versus an 18-year-old hasn't done any of those things. Who do you think he's going to choose, right? So I think that, maybe D2, maybe mid-majors will become the new D1, maybe JUCO. Another aspect of it is a lot of kids are going to a post-grad year in high school, right? Or they're reclassifying. So they're coming out as a freshman in college at maybe 19 or 20 now, right? And this has been going on in hockey for a long time, in Division I hockey. Those kids go to Canada and play, and then they come back and they're freshmen in some of the big hockey programs at age 20, 21, 22. So we clearly are seeing a trend towards older athletes, particularly in basketball. And what it's going to do to high school recruiting is uncertain, but for sure it's going to change the way things have been done.
Oh, man, I'm telling you right now, man, if you guys have any question for Mark tonight, please put them in the tagline so Val can put them out here. Please make sure that you continue to like us on the Pull Up Podcast show. You know, Mark and I are both coaches. We got to take both of these teams into halftime and talk about, we got one more half to play. Val, let's pay some bills. We'll be right back on the other side with the Pull Up Podcast show.
I've always thought about how my mom has supported me in any creative endeavor. How beautiful was it for your mom to be the superhero in your life and show up in your creative ventures with this book?
People ask her to sign the book more than they ask me to sign the book. Sometimes I step to the side, I take their picture. And, we have to celebrate our mothers. We got to celebrate our beginning. So she comes out with me. Every event, she is there. Even when I tell her she does not need to come, she will show up in the parking lot. And I'm like, oh, okay, you coming? Okay. I'm like, all right.
Right. And she got a bottle of wine in her hand.
What in the world? Why are you giving her alcohol?
No, I'm just saying. She showed up in the parking lot. She got a bottle of wine, nice wine. She's going to set it down. She's ready for the show, Val. You know what I'm saying? Because the funny part about it is, CJ, I've actually talked to Val. I thought about, writing a book myself because my man's in there. But,
I love it.
And look at Val.
My man's in them.
My man's in there. But you got to read the book. You got to read the book. But it's a play. CJ, I apologize because Val should have dropped some old Dub C so you could have came out crip walking. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not flamed up right now. I got to hold on. Trying to get me shot.
Going back to school tomorrow, like, I saw you, Miss Charles. I saw you.
I mean, I can crip walk, so please, but I'm kind of, authoring right now. You guys are funny.
Welcome to the Players NIL.
After thousands of reps in the weight room and hours on the field and in the classroom, you're ready to take your game and your brand to the next level. But how exactly do you maximize your NIL opportunities? Well, you've come to the right place. The Players NIL is a community that helps student athletes just like you.
As the father of 4 Division I student athletes, I founded the Players NIL to give top athletes access to industry experts. It's my mission to give you the best information possible to take your NIL game to the next level.
The Players NIL gave me exactly what I needed.
From brand building to manage my finance.
Players NIL gave me tools and resources to help me make the best decisions about my NIL opportunities.
Our online education platform lets you learn at your own pace. It consists of 5 pillars that give you a solid game plan to achieve your NIL goals.
Our pursuit of excellence does not end at college. The Players NIL is a community of lifelong learners. We provide resources to you at critical touch points throughout your professional development. So whether you're trying to get an inside track at your first job, find investors for your business idea, or connect with brands who need your skill set, you'll have a team behind you.
All you need to do now is sign up.
Join thousands of student athletes who are winning the NIL game.
It's time to take your game to the next level with Players NIL.
Man, I tell you, they got me pumped up. I'm ready to come out the locker room, Mark. I'm ready to play for you, Coach. I'm ready to do it. Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast show. This is your guy, the one and only Coach Tony. Got my guy, Mark Koesterer, to talk here about the NIL in the business of. Man, that video was absolutely nice. The crazy part about it, Mark, let's go away from the revenue generating guys, right? Because everyone always talks about football and basketball. Give me a little background on the Players NIL and how you came about that concept, and why did you want to jump, with both feet into the business can kind of jump out and help all athletes, no matter what sport they play?
Yeah, so it really started in 2008 when I went to work for a company in Los Angeles called Sports Studio. I eventually became the CEO of that company. And what we did was we created what we call scripted sports content for Hollywood. So TV shows, movies, commercials, photo shoots. And we did that in licensed partnership with the NBA, NFL, MLB, soccer. And it was there, Tony, that I really learned about athletes, branding, marketing, agents, studios, production, all of these things that really are the foundation of name, image, and likeness. We sold that business in June of 21. NIL was approved, as we've talked about, July 1, 2021. And I spent some time observing and paying attention. And what I realized was, again, there was a bunch of athletes that were being taken advantage of by adults. And I thought the one thing that was missing was education. And what's happened since July 1st, 2021 is that we've really divided the country athletically into two groups, the 2%ers, which is the pay-for-play revenue-generating sports, and the 98% that actually have to create real value, right? That have to have a real brand, that are not getting paid to run fast and jump high. They're getting paid for their social influence. They're getting paid for their community service, for who they are, for their celebrity. And we're really focused on, really building a better you through telling your story and creating a brand.
Oh, man, and my guy is on tonight. What's up, John? I love it, man. This is one of my close guys, and you guys know, John, by the way, man, call me. I got to get you back onto the new show, man. John St. John. He is one of my biggest guys on the West Coast. John is a flat-out scorer. You remember John, he came out of California, played ball back in the day. John wants to know, Mark, he said, I'd like to know what's the plan for the new OTL formula to collectors and NIL. He wants to know what's the new formula that's going to be out there for collectors and for the NIL. Has the NCAA came up with a new formula, or are they working on something that's going to be a pretty balance for these kids playing sports?
Well, we've talked about how the NCAA was forced to remove all the restrictions because of just an abundance of lawsuits. And those lawsuits have continued, whether it be whether athletes want to be employees, grouping together and being a collective bargaining unit. There's lots of restrictions around NIL that people believe will not pass muster with the federal government, right? There's all of these restrictions and these guidelines that haven't been enforced. So they have really come together with the lawsuits and created a collective organization that is roughly referred to as House versus NCAA. It's that lawsuit that is trying to legislate changes. And the answer to John's question is the proposal so far is heading towards a new subdivision of Division I football schools. There was an announcement today that we had at least a temporary or a next level agreement towards that, although we haven't completed that yet. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see probably 72 schools break away, and it'll really be professional football. It'll be athletes getting paid. There will be revenue sharing, whether they're employees or not, we're not sure where that's going to go. There will be NIL deal salary cap. That's why we see all these general managers being hired by football schools and basketball schools. But I think we're going to have a subdivision of 72, and then we're going to have another group of 50. And whether those schools will swing back and forth on the border between those two divisions, that's yet to be seen. But we will no longer have amateur football at the highest level in D1. There will be professional athletes.
And I'm going to add to that, Mark, and I'm going to tell you how the breakdown is going to come. You're going to have the breakdown is going to be the SEC and the Big Ten, and then you're going to have a fight for the bottom, which I think the middle tier will be whoever can survive between the Big 12 and the ACC. I've been talking about this. The Pac-12 is gone. They're going to basically rebuild with the AA and the Conference USA. They'll get those guys that are there, but you're going to see the Big Ten and the AC and the Big Ten and the SEC will lead the way. And this new formula, until the NCAA football expands from 12 to 16 and get a Sweet 16, stop giving these kids the entire month of December off. You have the first week of December be the Sweet 16, second week of December be the Elite Eight, third week of December be the Final Four. Give them 1 week. And Mark, when we grew up, when was the National Football Championship? January 1st, right? And it's no longer there. It's pushed back almost close to the Super Bowl. So I think from what you're saying, that's how we're going to see. Now, Vidium, it says, hey, Mark, with a college, athlete being able to earn, do you think they'll be more inclined to cash out after college and less motivated to join a professional league, depleting the talent pools and viewership in college? So do you think these kids are going to start opting out? Well, the only thing about that, V, is that they can't do it in football. They got to stay their junior year. So this is probably going to adhere more to basketball, men and women, on that. So what do you think about that question, Mark?
Well, I think it goes back to the age thing that you talked about. And I don't think that kids will opt not to be professionals. I just think they may wait a year or two, right? If you're we're using basketball here now, if you're a second or third round pick in the NBA these days, it probably means G League. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to make more money at Connecticut and Kentucky than you're going to make in the G League. Right.
Exactly.
And so I think what it will do, it will actually keep some of those older kids in school, especially in the women's game. Right. I don't know what Caitlin Clark made with the Indiana Fever this year, but I bet it paled in comparison to her NIL money. So in the women's basketball, I think for sure it's going to keep girls and women in college basketball. And I think you're going to see some of that in men's basketball. In football, no, because of the injury factor. I think if they get a chance to go, and by the way, we have such a huge number of athletes in the NFL that were late round draft picks. First, second round doesn't make any difference anymore. So I think in football that won't happen because of the injury factor.
Exactly. You are spot on. And the funny part about that, to add on to that question is that, I think the real question mark comes down to, can the NCAA find a third leg? When I say a third leg, we already know basketball and football, the revenue too, right? But look at a school like Vanderbilt in baseball and Coach Corbin. Oh my God, he's been killing it. The University of Tennessee the last few years in baseball, and baseball is coming out and doing it. Now your buddy Terrell says, hey, Mark, we go back in the days. He says, is this new age of college sports causing schools to rethink the way that they care about their principles and their values?
I think it's caused a lot of people to ask that question. I think there's a lot of self-reflection. I think it's pretty fair to say that, college sports has gotten crazy, out of control. The money is unbelievable right now. And, for instance, I believe it's true. The Ivy League doesn't have it. No school has a collective, last I was told, right? So they're holding to their academic principles. Look, using athletics to better your life is one of our principles. And I believe that that's true. And that includes education. Unfortunately, we probably have blurred the line between student and athlete, right? We're not really sure if it's a student athlete or either you're a student or you're an athlete today. So it's a great question, Terrell. I don't know, it's an individual decision by institution, but I do believe in life. Lots of these things are like a pendulum. They swing back and forth. And we're swung to the crazy side now. I think we're going to swing back to the middle. Somewhere in the middle is the truth, always in these situations.
Hey, Mark, it's Val the Voice. I think we lost Coach. I think Coach is frozen. I don't know exactly what happens, but of course, I've been here juggling and pushing buttons here. We have another question from John. He says, with that said, what happens to those Division I institutions that do not play football?
Well, I think, they'll continue as they are. they're not in the league with the football schools in terms of popularity and those types of things. They'll focus on education. They'll focus on athletes in their region. And I think they'll be fine as long as they're properly and financially solvent. But I don't think you need football to be a successful academic institution. But we certainly have football has created brands that we know that are national and international today.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. I know that what I've been getting with name, image, and likeness, kind of the education behind it, up here is the players NIL. This is some of your pillars. You actually mentioned a few of them. What are some of the ones that you consider the most important when you're bringing on a student athlete with your organization, the players NIL?
Yeah, a great question. And thank you for doing a great job with the graphics, Val. It's really awesome. So these are the 5 principles that I've designed through, my lifetime of experiences. And these are, I think, principles that every young person should probably understand, not just athletes. And, I start with the same question all the time, Val, when I speak to young people. And that is, what does success look like to you? What is it that you're trying to achieve? There's lots of different things, and you can have multiple answers to it. Is it team success, individual success? Is it money? Is it academics? Are you trying to get a job? Is this a career move for you? Are you into production, video editing, storytelling? I spent 15 years in Hollywood, and I've kind of, challenged the kids to think about their story and their success. What does that look like? And how do we build a better you to learn to lead in this world, right? To become great citizens, great athletes that become leaders of the community. And so we talk about personal branding, which is pillar number 1 for a reason, because it's, brand it's not your logo. It's not the name of your company. It's what people feel and think when they see you or when they hear you or when they see your company. And so what is your story? Who are you? What do you stand for? What do you represent? And how do people perceive you? And so, that's the first pillar that we have, because that's really part of this storytelling. Of course, we go through 4 others, but that's probably the one that most people gravitate towards.
Yeah, and I think it's imperative that we are training our athletes with these pillars that you have with the players NIL. But for me, financial literacy is probably one that probably gets overlooked a lot, because we want our athletes, especially if they're in their, I like to call it their field of genius, whether it be basketball, football, soccer, being someone that's a swimmer. If you're getting the deals, if you're making the money, then what are you doing with that? And are you financially putting it where it invests for you? I feel like Magic Johnson is kind of like the best example of someone who has really, gone beyond the sports world. And he actually just became like this excellent business person across many fields. And it would be so cool, definitely, if the players NIL would train, and it sounds like you would train to go, let's think beyond sports, if that's the case.
Well, it's a great point, but remember, your question was, what's the pillar that people gravitate towards, right? And so financial literacy is an uncomfortable subject, right?
I know.
And it involves looking ahead, right? It involves looking into the future. And if you have young children, or young children that are in their 20s or college age, no one's looking past this weekend, right? And so the challenge is, Val, is, how do we get them? For sure, it's the most important pillar, because it's the one that will affect their lives the longest. But getting young people to understand that, appreciate that, and follow those words of wisdom is a challenge.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that it is. And like I said, that I feel like that's important, but definitely branding, we definitely have to look at that. Well, we're taking our last break, and I'm going to look and see what happened to Coach, but we'll go ahead and we'll come back with more of the Pull Up Podcast show. Here we go. We're kicking off a whole brand new season. I know you guys have missed us, but we are back. And of course, it's always exciting and wonderful to have a very talented individual who has started a wonderful tech company. And then, of course, he is the host of Tech Thursdays on a platform called the House of Creativity. And he has just finished his book, Where? Jay Mullane Wise. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Val DeVoice Johnson. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
One thing I forgot to mention is that also about, I want to say October, November of last year, Wise stepped into the podcasting game, initially starting on Instagram and then started his platform, Wise Going Live. I was recently on the platform, but I think I've been there 4 times. It has been extremely gratifying to see how far you've come as a host, a podcaster, and also a moderator, sir. So I just wanted to say kudos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When you're around great talent like yourself, Val DeVoice, it only does it inspires you to go forth. And we have amazing community of people that inspire us to actually, keep accountable. You keep me accountable. I keep you accountable. We all keep each other accountable, and we try to do the great thing to move forward.
What is going on? I got to do the opening. I didn't do that. Just like from that movie, I'm going to Get You, Sucker. Everybody needs a theme song.
And you got that right.
Everybody needs a theme song. Let's not get it twisted.
Man, welcome to the world of technology, Mark.
You made it.
Man,
He's back. He's back. Yay!
Coach, I just want to make one thing very clear right now. You know the Wally Pipp story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Wally Pipp got hurt. Some young kid named Lou Gehrig comes in, and Wally Pipp never played again. I'm not saying much, but Val did a good job.
I know. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh man, welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast show. My guy, Mark Koesterer here. One and only Coach Tony. Mark, going into this fourth quarter here, we got to win this game, and we've been talking a little bit about the company and players NIL and everything that's going on, trying to give all these parents and these players, they'll get information and all of that. The question that I've got is that now we know that NIL is here to stay. We know that. And it's not going anywhere. Where do we go from here? 1. And 2, parents of football and basketball players, how do they navigate the next few years of making sure their wonderful sons and daughters get the opportunity to play college ball from all the hard work of middle school and high school basketball and football they've done?
Yeah, so while you were taking a break, I told Val that one of the things that we work on is looking into the future as far as possible. Let's not worry about today, tomorrow, next month. Where do you want to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? It's hard to get kids to think forward. It's hard to get parents to think that far forward. But with that said, the 2%, right? We talked about the subdivision in football and basketball. That's going to do its thing. That's going to happen. I believe that the 98%, Coach, is only going to grow in popularity because athletes are celebrities. Like we said, the 24 Paris Olympics, the largest social media event in the history of the world. We love athletics. Sports fan, the word F-A-N, is short for fanatic, right? And so we love athletes. We celebrate them. And I truly believe that these athletes, these mid-major schools, these non-revenue sport athletes that start now building a brand, understanding how to market, understanding how to attract and connect with an audience, understand how to grow their influence, okay? Some of the technical things about contracts and financial literacy, community service. These are the leaders of tomorrow. These are the kids that are going to run companies. They're going to run communities. They're going to be great citizens. They're going to be great leaders. And I think that NIL, real NIL, which is what I preach, is here to stay. And when parents and student athletes understand, that we can fuel their ambition, empower them, that this is a great platform to do it from, put the 2% in the box. Let's really change lives with this platform.
I mean, as we come down the stretch here, the last question I really got, I was listening to, Pat McAfee and these guys the other day, and they were talking about, they really broke down, Mark, the other day, and I want to really understand this from you. They said that the way the NCAA is setting up everything for futuristic growth from this NIL space is that they've already reached out to the NFL, and they've already reached out to the NBA, and as we talked about the collectives, right, we talked about the 2%ers, and we're talking about how the new league is going to be structured, possibly 70, 80 schools. They're asking the NBA to run the highest of the highest basketball players and the NFL to run the highest of the highest, college football players. Do you really think that's a reality? And if so, what are these kids going to do in the future for high school to make sure they get the opportunity to balance the playing field?
Well, it's two questions. I think the reality is that they probably are talking to them. My prediction and my opinion is that the reality is that private equity is going to come in and run that new subdivision.
Wow.
I think, companies like Redbird Capital are going to come in because they feel that college athletics is undervalued right now. They feel that it's got a 5 to 10 times greater upside than what we're seeing. Jerry Cardinal said that. I listened to him. And I think that they're looking at the facilities. Like I went to Penn State University last week to a football game, right? And they're like 110,000 seats, and they have 7 dates at home, right? Yeah. Like that building isn't being utilized. How do we make this building more revenue generating? And so, how do they monetize the fan base? How do they monetize the season ticket holders? When you go to a Penn State game, all of that brand awareness, but they're not generating enough money from it. And I think private equity is going to come in and they're going to run that subdivision. It may be the NBA and the NFL, but I think private equity is going to do it.
Oh, man. Yeah, and I'm just like you. I went to the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Penn State game last year in Columbus. And I saw the same thing, 105,000 people, and I think they had 7 home games. Same thing. Big Ten is the Big Ten. And it's crazy, and then you're looking at all this stuff. And with the private equities that are coming in and spending the money, do you think that the NCAA is going to eventually lose out to these private companies who are going to run the monetized side of the house? Kind of like what John was saying earlier, about the NIL piece and then the other private side. If the NIL is going to be the name, image, and likeness, and the private companies come in and pay these kids, do you think the NCAA is going to say, okay, we're going to give those X amount of players over to these entities, and then they can create basically salaries, or we're going to continue to monitor everything?
Yeah, so I only know what I read, right? I don't have any inside scoop. My crystal ball broke, right? I can't look into the future very well anymore.
Right.
But what I read is that the SEC and the Big Ten, as you suggested earlier, are talking about formulating a governing body. Is the NCAA part of that? I don't know. The NCAA's biggest cash cow is March Madness. They don't want to give that up.
I tell people that all the time. They don't believe me, Mark. I keep telling them March Madness is the biggest thing the NCAA owns, not football.
Yeah, well, but the playoff system is going to increase in value. So will the NCAA have a piece of the subdivision? I don't know that. The NCAA most likely will run the non-subdivision schools, mid-majors, D2, D3. That's kind of what I see. That's kind of what I think. Man,
I tell you. Well, man, listen, I thank you so much, man, for stopping in tonight. This has been a class. For those that don't know, hopefully you guys had your pen and your paper and taking some notes tonight. And this is not the last time Mark's going to be on the show. We're gonna come back down the road as we talk about this stuff and we start to see it take shape, and we want to really know because, the thing that gives me, Mark, is just like you've been in the business for, decades. And that I really hate to see these parents, man, that really put their blood, sweat, and tears in everything, and the kids come up short, and these kids are doing a great job of everything they can do. And like you said, and now the new reclass, it's going to be, I'm going to reclass, then reclass. But now it's the transfer. And now the transfer portal is the new reclass. Whether I reclass or not, just do it. If you want to learn more about the players' NIL, Mark, tell them how can they do that.
Well, thanks, Tony. It's been a pleasure. And you can follow us at theplayersinil.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Mark Koesterer, or on any social platform at theplayersinil.
Man, great. And this is the one and only Coach Tony. And this is the Pull Up Podcast show. And of course, I've got the Rise NIL for you learning opportunities about managing and training athletes on the NIL side of the house and brands. We bring them both together to make sure they both can expose the best side of the house. And tomorrow, those that want to listen to some entertainment and some value on the music side, don't forget to catch me and my girl right here, the host, Val the Voice, as she talks about the DJ saved her life. And this is a book with a QR code, so please scan that. Order the digital copy as the other print version is coming out. And tomorrow night, we're on live again with what? Interludes Talk on Tuesday, talking about everything from music and entertainment and what happened this week. And next week, we're going to get to another piece that Mark and I didn't get a chance to talk to. We're going to talk about the mental aspects of the athlete. We haven't talked about mental aspects of the athlete. And next week, Coach Bobby Jackson, who is a Northwestern grad, football guy, and he's entrenched in the business to talk about the mental game of the athlete. So make sure you tune in. Man, Mark, any final words for me, buddy?
No, thank you. Remember, NIL is for all, and it's not just a book, it's what we preach. And I appreciate the opportunity, Tony. Good luck to you and to Val. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Man, it's been absolutely great. Once again, please like us, share us, and more importantly, subscribe to the show. This is the Pull Up Podcast show, and I got one more thing for you. Peace.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, I said bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, it's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up.